and how are you out there? Welcome to this week's edition of Drums of Change. My name is Ralph Ezenwaji, and I'm going to start today's program with the Son and You segment, a segment that highlights the activities of the Standards Organization of Nigeria. And my special guest this evening is Dr. Joseph Ikem Odumodu, Director General of Nigerian Standards Organization. Dr. Odumodu will be joining us to talk about the ongoing campaign by the Standards Organization of Nigeria to eradicate the incidence of fake and substandard products in Nigeria. Welcome back. Activities of the Standards Organization of Nigeria have continued to make headlines as the organization wages war against the incidence of fake and substandard products in Nigeria. In fact, as an astute manager of main and resources, the DG, Dr. Ikem Odumodu, has repositioned the Standards Organization of Nigeria for greater achievements, and indeed they have achieved so much. And now Dr. Ikem Odumodu joins us to talk more about the activities of the Standards Organization of Nigeria. Before Dr. Joseph Ikem Odumodu became the DG Standards Organization of Nigeria, he was the Managing Director, May and Baker PLC. In fact, at May and Baker, that's during his tenure, he successfully diversified the operations of the company from producing purely pharmaceutical products into other areas, such as Mimi noodles. Indeed, Dr. Ikem Odumodu was so impressive at May and Baker that the federal government found him worthy to head the Standards Organization of Nigeria with the mandate of reforming the organization. Already, Dr. Ikem Odumodu has started to turn things around at the Standards Organization of Nigeria with the zero-tolerance policy on fake and substandard products. Dr. Ikem Odumodu, you came up with this zero-tolerance policy on fake and substandard products. What measures are now in place to sustain that policy?
One thing that came very clearly to us was that when we took over this job, we found out that Nigeria was under some kind of epidemic. We looked at what was happening in other countries, and what we found out was that our numbers were almost double what happened in Egypt, from Northern Africa, from Central Africa in Kenya, from Southern Africa in South Africa. So clearly, we knew that we were in a serious trouble. People were dying, Nigerians were dying, people were going through processes of losing income. If you buy a bulb, the bulb goes off the same day you bought it, and nothing happens, you don't get any, So at the end of the day, we found out that it was actually an issue that we needed to address very strongly. So what did we do? We launched a zero tolerance to substandard products. It wasn't actually a zero tolerance to corruption. However, I would also say that it is as much as zero tolerance to corruption, because everybody who decides to deal on substandard products is already dealing in corruption. So in that state, SON is also an anti-corruption agency, like I mentioned sometime last week. So we started a zero tolerance to corruption, zero tolerance to substandard products. What did we do? First is I had to work with the same people who always were in SON anyway. And one of the things I did was to make people to sign letters of resignation or some form of contracts that if I am found to have done the wrong thing, I am prepared to lose my job. Because you know how difficult it is for a public servant to lose his job. And that actually made a lot of difference, because when we started it, I found out that the level of compliance actually rose beyond the levels that anybody could find in any government agency. You know, it is not usual for a public servant to accept to relinquish his job because he has been found wanting. And I can tell you, a few people decided not to sign, and as a result of that, we had to post them to other functions. You know, the second thing we did was I also found out that leadership was very critical. If as a leader, if you don't do the right things, you will show the wrong examples to your people. And I recall that some of my colleagues, you know, directors and others, would always say, it's because you have made so much money and you have settled yourself in the private sector. That's why you want to do what you're doing. You're not doing what we want you to do and all that. But as a result, I mean, one thing that's clear is that if you want to do a good job, you must do the right thing. The point I'd like to stress is that this job is an anti-corruption job, and I have found out that there are a lot of powerful people who made money through the wrong means, who are involved in this practice, and they have continued to believe that the system will remain the way it's been. Unfortunately, since I have taken on the saddle, it has not been possible for them to do the same things that they had done. And I can tell you that has also been an issue in contention between my relationships with some of the people that I used to be very close to. Unfortunately, we have to do our job. If I have to do this job, then I have to do it correctly. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So these are some of the initiatives we have introduced, and they are working.
I'm aware that you've been meeting foreign enforcement agencies charged with the responsibility of maintaining standards in their respective countries. Now, how has that relationship prospered in terms of making sure that substandard products will no longer come in from those countries of import to our various points of entry?
What we've done, we've actually traveled quite a bit. We've been to Africa, we've been to Asia, we've been to America, we've also been to Europe. And one thing that clearly came out with the study we carried out was that 80% of our products in Nigeria came from Asia. And I say 80% of products came from Asia. I haven't said 80% of substandard products. 80% of substandard, 80% of consumer products that are used in Nigeria, from electrical to electronics to construction equipment to toys to furniture, they come from Asia. China, India, Bangladesh, you know, all those countries from that part of the world, South Korea and all that, Taiwan. And I can tell you clearly that when we also did a baseline study on the prevalence of substandard products in Nigeria, we found out that over 80% of substandard products in Nigeria also came from Asia. Naturally, of course. Of course, people will ask me, are there challenges in Nigeria? I say, yes, of course. 5% of products that are made in Nigeria also were substandard, and they all were made by Nigerian manufacturers. But when we probed deeper, we were able to find out that some of them were not deliberate, issues. Sometimes the process of manufacture would lead to some mistakes, and that mistake had resulted in maybe 5% of substandard products. But essentially, over 4/5 of substandard products in Nigeria came from Asia. So, what have we done with them? One, we have met with the governments of some of these countries in China, in South Korea, in Taiwan, and what we've done is to sign agreements with them that they would naturally bring products that meet Nigeria industrial standards. I say Nigeria industrial standards, or products that meet international standards. We agreed with them that they must be producing and exporting products that meet these standards to Nigeria. And those who've signed bilateral agreements with those countries. And I can tell you they're on. Recently, you may have read that we started the electronic products registration regime. The reason why we started that is to create a traceability. In the next 3 months, we will insist that every product in Nigeria displayed for sale for any consumer must carry a code, and if there is a product that doesn't have a code in May, before the end of May, we will remove that product and we will destroy it. Why do we do that? We are already collecting data for every product that is displayed for sale. Everybody who is offering products to consumers in Nigeria must register those products. We want to know who makes those products. We want to know who are your distributors. We want to know who is the importer of the product that comes to Nigeria. And we will give you a code that we would use to ensure that if we find anything wrong with that product, we will go looking for you. So I want to say that in the context of the agreements we already have with the foreign countries, because if a product is found wanting and, for example, it was made in China, we would ensure that the manufacturer in China is blacklisted. But in addition to that, because we already have a bilateral agreement with China, we would pass on the information to the Chinese authorities to make sure that that product or the company is blacklisted. In this regime, we would no longer accept any product that is for export only.
Dr. Ikem Odumodu, what does sun cap and man cap mean to an average, to a layman in Nigeria?
SUNCAP is the Standards Organization of Nigeria Offshore Conformity Assessment Program. It is a program that the federal government introduced in 2005. It is a program that was introduced as a result of the outcome of a research done in 2003, and government found out that a lot of products were coming from outside that did not meet Nigerian industrial standards. All over the world, Nigeria appointed Intertech, SGS, Cotecna, Chinese company and others. And all they do is that if you want to export products to Nigeria, they test the products before it is allowed to come to Nigeria. But when I came to SON in 2011, I found out that one of the challenges we had was the program was not working. And when we probed deeper, we found out that there was a disconnection between the testing and what is shipped to Nigeria. For example, a Nigerian importer goes abroad, usually in China, for example, and he takes a product, sends a sample to the agents, They test it and they say, oh, this product is the right one. And then the man goes and orders something else from the same factory. So what is tested is different from what is exported to Nigeria. In February this year, we started a new SONCAP regime. A new SONCAP regime is such that if a product must be exported to Nigeria, we would take sample from the container that is being shipped to Nigeria. We will take a sample from it. We will seal the container, and the container will be shipped to Nigeria. And within a week or two, we will receive directly a report that tells us the specifications of the products that will be shipped to Nigeria. The difference is that now we are testing what is being shipped to Nigeria as against what people test and they take something else and ship to Nigeria. So that's the difference in SONCAP. In MANCAP is a mandatory conformity assessment program. It only affects products that are manufactured locally. And what we do is that we visit factories at Nnewi, at Enugu, and we sit with the factory owners and we work through a process to ensure that they meet the Nigeria industrial standards. And what we do is that we start from their processes, we look at their personnel, we look at the systems they put in place, we look at the competencies of their personnel and ensure that there is a process to ensure that ultimately, over time, there is a sustainable system in place that they must continue to produce products that meet Nigeria industrial standards. That's MANCAP.
Well, that has been Dr. Ikem Odumodu. I'm sure that you have found this interview educative and informative. And that's why we're here for you. This interview continues next week. Stay tuned as we go on break. This is where we're going to draw the curtain this week. My name is Raphael Zamaji. Bye-bye and God bless you.